Hello. So here we have the 2022 AK Freewing package that we're putting together here in the UK. This package is a discounted set. It's a very good way to get into the sport, both from a technology viewpoint and a fiscal viewpoint. It's got a ton of options right from your very first session right up to pro level, I would say. And at this point, it would be fairly standard of me just to stand here and put you to sleep with a load of chat about how this stuff is the be-all and end-all. But the truth is, there is a lot going on. It's quite a technical sport, this game. So if you're willing to invest a little time in understanding how this kit works, I think you're going to get much more of an idea about the sport in general, what awaits you in learning it, and along the way, the quality and engineering of this package, I think, will inevitably speak for itself. Okay, so let's have a look at the first of these three components, the board. This is the phaser. For sure, the bigger phasers are awesome for learning on, but the range has a huge size span, from tiny little expert boards upwards, and it's quite possibly the most revered of all the boards in the industry right now. It's important to note that all of the engineering and construction that applies to the expert small sizes also carries up into the bigger boards too. Why? Well, because the less mass your board has, the easier it is to control. Winging is full of fast micro adjustments. Predominantly controlling the pitch of the foil, it's a cornerstone of how the foil is used, and having the lightest board possible is a fundamental gain. Heavy boards make pitch control difficult, even for experienced riders. Their extra mass creates an initial delay that leads to overcorrection and a feedback loop that can only be conquered really by throttling back and taking things more cautiously. Obviously, cheap boards suffer the most in the biggest sizes, which is why the phasers and their crazy lightweight do so well as first-time boards. The windsurfing industry has been perfecting this tech for 40 years, and they have the strength-to-weight ratio is about as good as you can get. It's got an ultralight EPS core, and the sandwich deck and a full carbon wrap. Tough enough and as strong as possible, but most importantly, light. These phasers win a lot of tests outright. They're easy and intuitive and famous for getting going earlier than anything else. Regarding sizing, I guess this is your first catch. For sure you need a biggish board to get you up, but a smaller board is way better when you actually get up. Now the three sizes that people look at to learn on are 140, 110 and 90. I would not suggest learning on less than 90 unless you're either very tenacious or very light. Of course, your weight lends perspective to this choice, but within these three sizes, you can't really get it horrendously wrong. You just have to weigh up the options. Bigger is easier, but you'll move on smaller. Smaller is initially harder, but you'll stay with the board for longer. The middle ground at 110 litres is where we genuinely sell the most. The learning curve is rapid and the board light enough to stay with you until you're really making serious inroads into the sport. Lastly, the phasers do come with foot straps, and I would suggest putting the front two ones on. They help you stay in line with the mast, which is the #1 rule in the sport, and make sure your front foot is in the right place on the board to control the pitch. It for sure accelerates your learning, and you can put the back strap on at a later date if you so wish. Right, now let's have a look at the wings. Firstly, the Freewing. This brand is as old as the sport. It comes from the know-how of Airush, which has over 20 years under its belt. The two models here, both with different size options, Freewing V2 and Freewing Go. Let's start with this, the Freewing Go. Now, this is the easier, lower aspect wing, so the distance from each tip is comparatively less, and this keeps them further away from the water so they don't tend to trip you up when you're getting going. The Go is more powerful than the Freewing, so it pulls you up and away without having to pump or use higher wind strengths for the size. It's really easy handling too, so it forgives a lot of the finer mistakes you'll make and will bring you a lot more comparative progress in the first few sessions. That said, it's performant enough not to hold you back when you start winding it up. In fact, many very experienced riders really rate these things, especially in the smallest sizes. It's actually a more recent wing design than the Freewing, the V2, so it has a new window material that you can scrunch up and stuff in the bag without issue, and new handle layouts. This one has 3 handles, the smaller one 2, and it also comes with a waist leash which goes around your waist as opposed to your wrist. It's a really solid construction too, and it's tested very, very well in the media. You know, when this wing came out, we were a bit nervous at the start of the year. I mean, it was a cheaper wing than the Freewing, and we worried that there may have been some corners cut. But in truth, it's been really well received, and touch wood, so far we've had no reliability issues at all. Okay, moving on to the Freewing V2. Now, this wing is a bit more advanced, but it's not a difficult wing to use in the grand scheme of things. It does have a stiffer, more efficient profile, and that means though it's got less static power than the Go, it'll respond better to a few pumps to break the board loose and initiate flight. When it's up, it has a bit more efficiency than the Go, so it does go a bit faster and points better upwind. Plus, it'll go through the eye of the wind easier in tacks and be more efficient flagged out, so more to grow into. That said, it will be 15 or so sessions down the line before you can really start to tap into what it offers in excess of the Go. It also uses a slightly higher grade of Dacron and canopy, which is there to deal with the higher sustained loadings that it's designed to take. Size-wise, well, the classic starting point is 5 metre. As one wing that covers the widest possible wind range, this is it. Most start on a 5 or a 5.5 in the Freewing Go's case. It can be argued that lighter people start on the next size down and heavier people on the next size up, but this size is a real sweet spot to learn on. As your ability and tenacity grows, you can add a smaller wing, and ultimately this is the one you'll spend most of your time on and enjoy using the most, I dare say bringing you the most progression. Now, onto foils. And this is the most complex and nerdy bit, so I'm either going to bore you to sleep or you're going to need to get your finger ready for a bit of rewinding. Right, these are the terminologies. Masthead, mast, fuselage, front wing, rear wing. The front wing is going to create lift and act as a pivot point. The rear wing acts as a counterbalance to that pivot, pushing down, and you are up there on the board standing forwards and pushing down on the other side to counterbalance. So the thing trims and goes where you direct it, all by shifting your weight forward and back. Now the AK range has 3 ranges of front wing, 5 different types of rear stabilizers, 2 different types of fuselages, 2 mast types, all with multiple mast lengths. Now, it sounds like a headache in a can, but it's really not. For one, everything fits everything else with the same bolts and fixings, so that's one complication sidelined. Secondly, we're only offering the beginner suitable components in this package. The rest are there for you to buy when you want to push things on when you get good. Now, masts. These come in all different lengths, and this is where alloy masts are quite handy. Compared to carbon, it's much cheaper to buy just the alloy spar, and as and when you feel the need to change your sizes, you can just swap out the central section and that changes the length. As a rule, I wouldn't recommend learning on larger than 80. In fact, many go for the recommended length of 70, and this will tip you off from a very civilized height. And if you want the calmest of first sessions, then 60, but you're going to outgrow it pretty fast. Whatever mast you choose, you will ultimately settle on around 80 to 100 as an expert rider. Big masts like the 95 will give you a really lovely view, but when you do breach, like I did here on a 105, you're not going to skip and recover, you're going to go straight over the handlebars and make a lovely pretty hole in the sea. You'll also have to walk out a fair bit further on a big mast. A 95 mast, well, you need to be chest deep to start, compared to a 60, which really only needs waist depth, and that is quite a big difference, especially if you're riding in shallower tidal water. Bigger masts do help you stop breaching, which can be a problem even for experts in chop and around tight corners when the wings stick out, which is why experienced riders run a minimum of 80 as a rule. Front wing. Here we have another choice. In one hand, I have the Trek series wing, in the other, the Tracer. The difference between the two? Well, the Trek is easier. When lift starts, it comes in more gradually, raising you out of the water more slowly, and it allows you to get stable at the slowest of speeds. But the price to pay is a degree of efficiency. The Tracer, well, its lift comes in a bit later, so you do have to have a fraction more board speed to start, and it comes in a bit more suddenly. You'll get used to it, but it is noticeable when you compare the two. It's also a bit more efficient, the Tracer, so it has a higher cruising speed and longer glide, and this will help you carry speed through the turns, though it will complain earlier if your speed decays too much. Which one should you go for? Well, I could talk you round and round in circles, and in the end there's no real perfect answer. If you want as much help learning as possible, for sure the Trek. If you think you're going to get good quickly, then for sure the Tracer. Regardless, you'll not be crippling yourself even if you flip a coin on this one, as the whole system is modular, and ultimately you'll be using a smaller wing in the future anyway, so most do tend to side with the Trek. Now, size-wise, if you're heavier, say 80 kilos plus, then I would go for the 1900-2000 wings. That's the 2000 Trek there. If you're lighter, say 70 kilos or less, go for the 1600s. If you're in the middle, then just follow your instinct as to whether you think you'll pick this up fast, 1600s, or a bit more slowly, 1900s and 2000s. Like I said before, whatever you buy now is not what you're going to be riding forever. So sometimes it helps to be a bit more conservative to start and then take the gloves off when you've got a bit more form and experience. Right, rear wings, or what they call stabilizers. Now there are a number of different types of these, and there's something really trick about the AK hydrofoils which makes your choice of stabilizer very easy. The punchline is they are quite neutral, but more importantly, adjustable in pitch. So my advice is get the biggest one right now because it's going to give you the most stability without causing you a trimming headache further down the line. The reason is a cam system on the back of the fuselage. Now it's a bit of genius this. By sliding the rear stab forward and back on the adjustable cam, you can alter how much power it has. This changes the balance of the foil, meaning it takes the balance point from positive pressure on the back leg to positive pressure on the front leg. AK makes hydrofoils not just for wind sports, but also for surfing, all on the same chassis. And the truth is that the sports and how you ride the foils are all very different. The adjustable rear wing allows you easily to account for this. More than that, it also lets you chop and change the front wings without having to rebalance them every time with a specific different stabilizer every time. So stick with the big one for now, the Mustache 340, and if you want smaller for more efficiency in the future, then you can go for something like this. This is the 300 downwing. But at the start, bigger, most definitely better. Next, the fuselage. My only advice here is go for the larger 71 centimeter fuselage. It's, I think, plenty short enough. Generally speaking, the AK designs are inherently maneuverable anyway, so unless you're a god, you don't really need to sacrifice stability for maneuverability, which is what you're essentially doing with the shorter fuselage. I still use this long one now, and even after 2 years, it's more than agile enough for anything that I throw at it. Lastly, beyond the wings, the board and the foil, we also supply a full-size pump for the wing, which you're going to need to blow it up, a wing leash, which you're going to need to stop it from blowing away, and a 6-foot board leash that goes around the top of your calf. One other thing to mention, real-world progress rates. Now, recently, two of my good friends both started learning to wing, both actually on this setup, specifically 5-meter free wing, 110-litre phaser, and 1900 tracers. Here's some footage of their first few sessions, I think session 3 on a borrowed 3.5 Go here for George. Now, both were accomplished windsurfers, but with no real foiling experience at all. Right now, they're 3 months in. One has 15 hours on the water and the other, I think, 10. Both up and riding solidly, though not quite getting their jibes. As an experiment, I thought it a bit of fun to take them both to the beach last Friday and spread a smorgasbord of kit in front of them and just stand back and see what happened. They tried boards of 65 litres and up, and front wings, I think, from 1,000 square centimetres on. Now, this is footage of them actually riding that day. I was genuinely super curious to see how it would pan out and how far they could go in terms of equipment before they had a sense of humour failure. After playing swap shop for 3 hours, both of them settled on, to my shock, a 1,000 square centimetre plasma, 300 stab and 78 litre phaser. Exactly the same foil that I use after 2 years of riding, so that's pretty impressive progression, and it only goes to show how fast you can learn. That said, they would not be there if their starter kit hadn't been up to the job in the first place, and in this there is a real lesson to be learned. After this, they sold their 110s over the weekend and kept their 1900s for learning the stuff that they can't yet do, and retooled themselves with smaller kit for the next stage of their journey. So there you have it. I sincerely hope this has given you some more insight into the sport. And as with all things, you may be able to buy cheaper, but value-wise, I might take some convincing on this particular kit set. You can find a link to the kit in the description below and on any of the UK AK dealers' websites, or you can pop into your local dealer for a look at it close up. This kit really is at the top of the design tree, and like my friends illustrated, just because you are learning doesn't mean to say that cutting-edge technical advantages aren't relevant. Far from it, in fact, they really, really are. So whichever way you decide to go, I sincerely hope this video was useful, and I do hope that you choose to make the leap into this sport with us. Winging really has proven itself to be far more enjoyable than any of us had originally thought. Please leave us any questions in the comments section and we'll do our best to answer them, and hopefully we'll see you on the water soon.